The closer they feel to you, the further they run from themselves. Sounds insane, right? But my friends, that's where the truth lives. You're not losing them, you're shaking something in them, something raw, something real. And sometimes real doesn't feel safe. It feels like fire to someone who's only ever known cold. That's why they push you away when they want you the most. It's not logic, it's emotional survival. And if you don't know how to read between those lines, you'll react, chase, or crumble, and lose them altogether. So stay with me, because once you understand this, you won't just stop chasing the wrong things. You'll start attracting everything that's meant for you. Hey folks, imagine this. You're walking through a forest and suddenly a wild animal sees you. You're not threatening it. You're not attacking. You're just standing there. But the moment your presence is felt, it bolts. Why? Because your presence, though calm, disrupted its illusion of safety. You became the unknown. You became real. That's what happens with people too, especially in modern dating. You come in with clarity, calm energy and truth, and they vanish. Not because you scared them with chaos, but because you scared them with stability. You made them feel something they didn't expect. And for someone used to survival mode, love is not warmth, it's fire, and fire burns. And here's the lie that's been sold to you. If they want you, they'll never push you away. False. Some of the people who want you the most will treat you like a threat, not because they hate you, but because they don't know how to handle what you're awakening inside of them. Let's be honest, not everyone is ready for real connection. Some people only know how to orbit chaos, so when they meet someone who feels like peace, they panic. They run not from you, but from what you represent: truth, stillness, and emotional safety. And emotional safety, my friends, requires them to drop their mask. And not everyone's ready to be seen naked in the soul. Let me tell you something real. Sometimes the person who ghosted you is sitting there, hoping you'd still fight for them, but is too scared to admit they were never ready to receive you in the first place. That's not your battle. That's not your burden. That's a mirror they have to face, and if you chase them while they're in that fear, you're not helping. You're confirming their panic. That's why your silence sometimes says more than your words ever could. That's why detachment is not weakness, it's wisdom. You don't need to chase clarity when you are clarity. And hey, don't take their distance as your failure. Take it as your confirmation. You were powerful enough to awaken something in them that they weren't ready to deal with. That says more about your light than their reaction ever could. Don't let their panic shrink your presence. Stand tall, breathe deep, smile a little, even laugh. Because this whole push-pull dynamic, it's not personal, it's psychological. It's fear dressed up as indifference. And once you stop internalizing their confusion, you'll stop being confused yourself. So, my friends, if you've ever felt blindsided by someone pulling away just when it felt real, you're not crazy. You were just dealing with someone who hasn't met themselves as deeply as they met you. That's not your fault. That's their journey. You just keep showing up as the steady one, the grounded one, the unbothered one. Because that energy, that's what makes you unforgettable. That's what makes them come back if they ever grow enough to hold it. Type this in the comments right now. I lead with calm. Let them feel your stillness, even in silence, like the mountain that doesn't move just because the wind howls. Press that like button, subscribe to join this movement of grounded warriors, and stay with me because we're just getting started. Number 1. They fear what you're unlocking inside them. Sometimes the reason they push you away is because you're the only one who ever got close enough to touch the parts they've hidden their whole life. That's the kind of truth that doesn't just sting, it shatters illusions, because it's easy to assume they're pulling away because they don't care. It's easier to call them cold, emotionally unavailable, or a player. But what if the opposite is true? What if your presence didn't trigger rejection, but revelation? What if they felt something real for the first time in years, and it terrified them? Imagine walking through a haunted house you've decorated yourself. You know where everything is, what to expect. The ghosts are familiar, but now imagine someone walks in and turns on the lights. No drama, no chaos, just calm, steady light. And suddenly, all those hidden shadows, fears, and messes are exposed. That's what your presence does. You didn't walk in shouting or judging. You simply showed up with emotional honesty, depth, clarity, and that alone flipped a switch in their mind. You became the light in a room they weren't ready to see, and their first instinct: turn the light off, push it away, retreat to what feels familiar. That's the paradox nobody talks about. It's not always your flaws that scare them. It's your strength, your emotional calm, your depth, your presence. That's what makes them feel seen in a way they can't control. And if they've built their identity around control, then you become the threat. Not because you harmed them, but because you softened the parts of them that weren't ready to melt yet. You brought warmth to places they've kept frozen out of protection. Now here's where the questions start forming in your mind. Why would they fear something good? Why run from someone who's real? If they want love, why do they retreat when it shows up? And those are the questions that drive people crazy, because we've been told a lie. The lie that says if someone pulls away, it must mean they're not interested. The lie that says love should always look like closeness, affection, consistency. But real emotional connection, it's not always that clean. It's messy, it's raw. And sometimes it's too much too soon for someone who's never had a safe space before. Here's the truth. Emotional intensity isn't always romantic for them. Sometimes it's terrifying. When you make them feel something real, they don't celebrate, they assess, they panic, they freeze. Especially if they've been in relationships where showing emotion meant being controlled, judged, or abandoned. So when they start catching deep feelings for you, it's not all butterflies and good vibes. It's fear. Fear of repeating pain, fear of being vulnerable again, fear of depending on someone who might walk away. And guess what? The more consistent, stable, and real you are, the more terrifying that possibility becomes. So they start pulling away, maybe slowly, maybe all at once. They don't reply as fast. They seem cold, distant, different, and your mind starts spinning, wondering what you did wrong. But my friends, let me break another lie. You didn't mess it up. You awakened something in them they didn't know how to hold. And that's not weakness on your part. That's power. Not control, not manipulation, just power in presence, power in truth. And some people aren't ready to carry that kind of emotional weight. Think of it like this. A bird that's been caged its whole life doesn't know what to do when the door opens. It might dream of flying, but freedom feels foreign. And sometimes it chooses the cage, not because the cage is better, but because the sky is terrifying when you've only ever known walls. That's how emotional safety feels to someone who's been broken. You offer wings, and they panic. They wonder, what if I fall? What if I can't keep up? What if they leave the moment they see the real me? So they pull back, not because they don't want you, but because they don't know how to hold you. And here's where most people make the mistake. They chase, they try to reassure, over-communicate, fix, prove they're safe. But that pressure only confirms the fear. It tells them, you're too much, you're suffocating me. And now the connection that was once a spark turns into a wildfire, one they're desperate to put out. Not because the flame was wrong, but because they never learned how to sit near a fire without burning themselves. So what do? You hold the line. You don't chase fear. You don't run after confusion. You stay still, like a lighthouse in the storm. Let them drift if they must. But don't collapse your power trying to keep them near. If they felt something real, and most of the time they did, then that feeling will haunt them more than your absence ever could. Because silence doesn't mean you stopped caring. It means you respect your own emotional space enough not to beg for someone who's scared of theirs. And let me tell you, folks, this isn't about punishment. It's about protection, yours and theirs. You're not closing the door. You're standing by it, open, but not wide open to chaos. You're not proving you're different through words. You're showing it through stillness, through patience, through the kind of strength that says, I'll be here if you're ready, but I won't shrink to make you feel taller. That's power. That's leadership. That's the kind of grounded presence that makes people come back, not because you begged, but because they finally realized they were safe to. So, if you've ever been pushed away by someone who clearly felt something, remind yourself, you were never the problem, you were the mirror. And most people run from their own reflection before they ever learn to love it. Type this in the comments right now. I stay grounded. Say it like you mean it. Say it for yourself, for the version of you that used to chase, for the version that thought love was proven by pursuit. Show them, show yourself, show the world around you. You don't fear distance when you walk in truth. And stay with me, because what's coming next will completely shift how you handle their silence. We're just getting started. Number 2, they push because they hope you'll prove them wrong. Sometimes they push not to get rid of you, but to see if you'll still stand there when the storm hits. That's what they won't tell you out loud. Because it's not always a conscious move. It's instinct, deeply wired, unspoken. A learned response from past experiences where love turned into pain and promises faded into silence. So now, even when they start to care about you, especially when they start to care about you, they create distance. Not because they're over it, but because they're overwhelmed by it. And the space they create? That's not just room to breathe, it's a silent test, a test to see what you'll do next. Here's the kicker, my friends. They don't want you to chase out of desperation. They don't want long paragraphs or repeated "what's wrong" messages. What they want, what they're hoping, is that you'll stay grounded, that you'll be solid, that you'll prove them wrong, not with noise, but with non-reactive strength. You see, in a world where most people flinch at the first sign of emotional uncertainty, standing firm is rare. And rare, my friends, is unforgettable. Now let me break something wide open. You've probably been taught that love should be easy, that when it's right, it should just flow without resistance. And while that's a beautiful fantasy, real connection stirs up real fears, especially for someone who's been burned. So when they start pushing you away, it's not always about ending it. Sometimes it's a fear-based reflex. Like a child who's been bitten by a dog, they want to pet one again, but their body still flinches. It's not the dog's fault, it's the memory. That's you. You're the safe one, but they don't know that yet. So they push. And here's where most people fail. They see the push as rejection, as disrespect, as final. And so they respond emotionally. They chase, they argue, they spiral. But what they don't see is that their reaction is part of the evaluation. Because here's what's happening beneath the surface. They're asking a silent question. Are you like the rest? Will you turn needy when things aren't perfect? Will you collapse if I stop feeding your ego? Or will you remain steady when I'm scared? And if you respond like the others, with fear, insecurity, pressure, they get their answer. That's why detachment isn't cruelty, it's clarity. That's why calmness isn't passivity, it's power. Because the truth is, they're not testing your charm, they're testing your capacity. Can you hold them without holding them too tight? Can you care without controlling? Can you stay available without begging for their attention? That's the test. and the reward for passing it. Respect, and respect is what unlocks trust. And trust, that's what deep attraction is actually built on. Not flowers, not flattery, but emotional consistency. Think of it like a house. Anyone can admire the exterior, the design, the beauty, but when a storm hits, they want to know if the foundation holds. That's what you are in their life right now, a foundation being tested, and every time you respond with peace instead of panic, you pass. Every time you remain patient without disappearing, you prove something no words could. Every time you let silence be silence without trying to force connection, you let them feel the weight of their own walls and the value of your presence on the other side of them. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Why do I have to be the one to prove anything? And that's a fair question, but let's be honest. You're not doing this to win them. You're doing it to show who you are under pressure. Because how you show up when things get confusing defines you far more than how you show up when it's easy. Anyone can be charming on a good day. Anyone can be sweet when love is flowing. But it takes a grounded man to remain calm when uncertainty creeps in. That's the man they remember. That's the man they can't shake. Because he didn't beg for trust. He embodied it. And here's the twist. They might not even realize they're testing you. They might not understand why they're pulling back. But it doesn't matter. What matters is you understand. What matters is that you don't abandon yourself trying to get closer to someone who's still deciding whether they feel safe enough to receive you. Your job isn't to convince. It's to remain. And in your stillness, they find their answer. So the next time they create space, don't panic. Don't perform. Don't play the fool trying to prove you're different. Be different. Let your silence echo louder than empty words. Let your energy say, I see you pulling back, and I'm still here, calm, whole, unshaken. Because that energy, that's the kind that makes someone reevaluate their fear. That's the kind that makes them wonder why you didn't chase and why they want to come back. So write this in the comments, my friends. I remain steady. Show the world. Show yourself. Show them, if they're watching, that you don't chase storms. You outlast them. And stay with me, because what's coming next will finally help you see that their behavior was never really about you at all. Number 3. They want you but don't know how to receive you. Some people aren't afraid of being unloved. They're afraid of finally being loved right. That line hits, doesn't it? Because most folks think the greatest fear in relationships is abandonment. But what if the deeper fear is being chosen, genuinely, fully, with no mask, no performance, no pretending? That kind of love, the calm, stable kind that doesn't come with drama, requires something most people aren't prepared to give: openness. And here's where it gets real. They want you, but they don't know how to receive you. Not because you're too much, but because they've never been taught how to accept something real without bracing for pain. Imagine handing a starving person a full plate of nourishing food. You'd think they'd eat it, right? But if they've been starving long enough, they hesitate, they flinch, they wonder if it's poisoned, if it'll be taken away, if this kindness is just a setup for another cruel punchline. So instead of receiving, they retreat. Not because they're ungrateful, but because they've trained themselves to expect disappointment. And when you walk in with warmth, clarity, presence, and intention, it short-circuits their system. You're feeding a heart that's been living off crumbs, and their mind doesn't know what to do with that. So they hesitate, they push, they act like they don't care, and you're left standing there confused, thinking, I did everything right. Why does it feel like they're pulling away? Because, my friend, it's not about your actions. It's about their capacity. You showed up with something real, and they're still wired for survival. You offered peace. and they're still addicted to chaos. You became a mirror, and not everyone's ready to see themselves in one. Let's break the lie wide open. Wanting someone and being ready for them are two very different things. They can crave your presence, dream about your energy, replay your words in their head at night, and still push you away. Because receiving love, real love, requires trust. And trust is not built overnight. It's built in silence, in space, in observing how someone behaves when things get quiet. And when they pull back, they're not just watching you from a distance, they're watching themselves. They're wondering, can I actually do this? Can I hold something this pure without destroying it? Because deep down, many people don't fear being rejected. They fear being fully seen and still not being enough. And you, my friend, with all your calm strength, your patience, your steady presence, you see them. You're not just flirting with the version they post online. You see their hesitation, their scars, their inconsistency. You see past the act, and that terrifies them. Because now, it's not just about you showing up. It's about them not knowing how to meet you there. And here's where most people mess it up. They take that retreat personally. They try to fix it. They start chasing, convincing, over-explaining, trying to prove that they're safe to love. But all that does, it overwhelms them more. Because now you've become another source of pressure. And when someone's nervous system is already on edge, even kindness can feel like a threat. So they run faster. Not because they don't want you, but because they don't know how to believe you're real. Let me give you a truth that most never hear. It's not your job to teach someone how to receive what they claim to want. That's their journey. Your job is to stay aligned, to show up consistently, but never desperately, to offer connection, not chase it, to be available, but not abandoned in the process. Because your love should never require you to lose yourself. They want you, but that doesn't mean they're ready to receive you. So when they push, you don't push back. You don't beg. You don't plead. You don't become the emotional babysitter of someone else's fear. You stay in your lane and let them feel what distance from your presence actually feels like. Because here's the twist. They know your worth. That's not the issue. The issue is whether they believe they deserve it. And if they don't, no amount of reassurance will fill that gap. That's a hole only they can patch. You're not a savior, you're a standard. And if they rise to meet it, beautiful. But if they retreat into the shadows, don't follow them. You didn't lose them, they lost access to something rare. And folks, I know it hurts to watch someone back away from something that felt so real, but never confuse someone's emotional unreadiness with a reflection of your value. Sometimes you meet the right soul at the wrong time in their growth, and it's not your responsibility to fast forward their healing. It's your responsibility to protect your peace. So if someone wants you but keeps pushing you away, remember this. Your value doesn't shrink just because they can't carry it yet. You don't force your way into their life. You let your absence echo with everything your presence offered. And if they're meant for you, they'll come back, not with confusion, but with clarity, with open hands, with steady energy. Because only then will they be ready to receive you, not just want you. Type this in the comments right now. I don't shrink. Say it loud. Say it for the part of you that used to chase. Say it for the one who used to beg to be understood. Say it for your future self who refuses to fold when someone pulls back in fear. And stay with me, because what's coming next will expose the deeper layer of why they're really pulling away. Number 4, this is not about you, it's about their mirror. You didn't break them, you just showed them what was already cracked. And that's the part they don't want to admit, that their reaction wasn't about what you said or did, but about what your presence revealed. You became the mirror, and not everyone can handle their reflection, my friends. especially not when they've spent years decorating their wounds with distractions, fake confidence, and temporary validation. When you come along with stillness, with depth, with real emotional presence, that mirror starts to show things they've kept buried. And guess what? That's when they run. Not because you did something wrong, but because you held up a truth they weren't ready to face. Imagine this. Someone's been living in a dimly lit room for years. They've adjusted to the shadows, built a life in the dark, and then you walk in, not with fireworks or a spotlight, but with quiet light, a steady flame, and suddenly they see the dust, the stains, the cracks in the walls, not because you pointed them out, but because you illuminated what was already there. That's the power of presence. And presence, when it's real, exposes everything that isn't. So they pull away, they go cold, they avoid your eyes, they question the connection, and your instinct might be to think, "What did I do?" But my friend, that's the wrong question. The better question is, what did I reveal? Because a lot of people say they want connection, but the truth is, they only want it when it doesn't require self-confrontation. And you? You confronted them without saying a word. Your energy did the talking. Your steadiness did the shaking. You see, people don't always fear being hurt. What they really fear is being seen. And not just the parts they've polished for the world, but the parts they've buried. Their fear, their self-doubt, their neediness, their past mistakes. And when someone starts to care for them without conditions, without trying to fix them or use them, they don't know how to process that. Because in a world full of performers, the raw and the real feels foreign, almost unbearable. And that's what you are to them, a foreign feeling. Not because you're strange, but because you're rare. You don't play games. You don't react out of insecurity. You stay in your frame. You don't flinch when they test you. And instead of feeling safe in that, they panic. Because if you see all of them and still choose to stay, now the question becomes, do I even deserve this? And if they haven't answered that question within themselves, the mirror becomes a threat. So they run. Not from you, but from the reflection you force them to look at. And I need you to hear this loud. It's not your job to clean someone else's mirror. You're not here to fix what they refuse to face. You're here to reflect, not rescue. You're here to invite, not invade. You offer truth, stability, presence. If they can't handle that, if they distort it, blame it, reject it, that's not your weight to carry. That's their fear being louder than their readiness. Now here's where the old version of you might show up. The one who tries harder, the one who begs to be understood, the one who starts questioning their own worth just because someone else turned away. But that version of you, let it go. That was survival. Now you're choosing peace. Now you're choosing truth. And the truth is, you don't lose value just because someone refuses to face their own. You're not the villain in their story. You're the turning point. And they'll either grow from the mirror you provided, or they'll run back to their familiar darkness. Either way, you stand tall. You don't chase. You don't explain your reflection to someone who keeps closing their eyes. You simply remain. Because the one who can stand in full truth and not waver, that's the one who leads. That's the one who attracts what's ready. And yes, it might hurt to watch someone spiral away from something so real, but your job isn't to shrink so they feel comfortable. Your job is to hold your light and let them decide if they're ready to stop hiding. So if you've ever been pushed away for no clear reason, if someone suddenly acted like the connection was too much or too fast, understand this: you became the mirror, and they saw something they weren't ready to confront. It's not personal, it's psychological, and it's powerful, but it's not your responsibility to carry their fear. Type this in the comments right now: I reflect, not chase. That's your affirmation. That's your new mindset. You don't beg for someone to love you when your very presence reveals what they've been running from. You don't bend to make someone feel better about their own lack of healing. You shine, you stay grounded, you move forward, with or without them. And stay with me, because the next section will uncover the hidden silence that makes them question everything when you don't chase. What happens when you walk away not in anger, but in absolute peace? That's where we're going next. Number 5, your power is in not needing closure. The moment you stop needing answers is the moment you start getting respect. Most people chase closure like it's oxygen. They think if they can just get that one final conversation, that one explanation, that one why, they'll be able to move on. But let me tell you something that might sting. Closure is rarely given by the person who hurt you. True closure comes from you, from standing tall, even in the silence. From realizing that not every story needs a neat ending, and not every connection will give you the validation you want. In fact, the more you demand answers from someone who's already pulling away, the weaker you appear, not because you're weak, but because you're giving them power over your peace. Think of it like this. Imagine standing in front of a locked door. You knock, no answer. You knock again, still nothing. At some point, continuing to knock isn't strength, it's self-betrayal. It's you telling yourself that what's behind that door matters more than what's in front of you, your future, your growth, your self-respect. The truth is, when someone pushes you away, whether it's from fear, confusion, or self-sabotage, your power isn't in demanding to know why. Your power is in how you respond to the silence. And I know what you're thinking, my friends. But don't I deserve an explanation? Don't I deserve to understand what happened? Of course you do. But here's the hard truth. Someone who truly values you doesn't leave you guessing. Someone who's ready for you doesn't play hide and seek with their emotions. So, if you're sitting there waiting for closure, understand this. Their silence is closure. Their withdrawal is your answer. And instead of chasing clarity from them, the real move is to create clarity within yourself. You see, the need for closure often comes from a fear that you weren't enough, that maybe if you said the right thing, did the right thing, or tried harder, they'd have stayed. But that's a lie. You don't lose someone who's ready to hold what you offer. You can't scare away someone who's truly aligned with your energy. And if they pulled away, it's not because you're lacking, it's because they weren't prepared to face what you brought into their life. That's on them, not you. Here's another truth that will change the way you see this. Sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is silence. Not bitter silence, not passive-aggressive silence, but the silence of someone who refuses to beg for an explanation they no longer need. When you stop calling, texting, or trying to fix what they broke, you communicate something louder than words. I value myself too much to chase confusion. And that, my friends, is magnetic. Because when someone realizes they can't shake you with their distance, they start to question everything. Think about it. When you go quiet, they don't just feel your absence. They feel the weight of what they lost. That's when their mind starts racing. Why aren't they chasing me? Why aren't they demanding answers? Were they stronger than I thought? Did I underestimate them? And suddenly, the power dynamic shifts. You're no longer the one waiting for closure, they are. But let me make one thing clear. This isn't about playing games or trying to manipulate someone into coming back. This is about reclaiming your energy. It's about realizing that the more you chase closure from someone who doesn't have the capacity to give it, the more you abandon yourself. And once you truly get that, you'll never run after an answer again. You'll understand that your stillness is the loudest response. Now, this doesn't mean it won't hurt. Of course it will. You'll feel the pull to text them, to ask why, to demand they explain themselves. But every time you resist that urge, you grow stronger. Every time you choose your dignity over desperation, you show yourself and the world what kind of person you are. You're not someone who needs constant validation to know their worth. You're not someone who breaks because someone else couldn't hold you. You're the kind of person who stands firm, even in the silence, because you know that your value doesn't change just because someone else failed to see it. So, if you're sitting there right now, waiting for someone to give you closure, here's your sign. Stop waiting. Stop knocking on doors that are closed. Stop chasing words that will never heal you. Your healing doesn't come from them. It comes from the decision to keep moving forward, even with unanswered questions. And when you do that, you'll realize something powerful. You never needed closure. You needed clarity. And clarity comes when you stop asking, why did they pull away? And start saying, I deserve better energy around me. My friends, the power you gain from not needing closure is unmatched. It's what separates the grounded from the desperate. It's what makes you untouchable, because the one who doesn't demand validation is the one who can't be controlled. And when you carry that energy, you don't just attract people, you attract respect. So, type this in the comments right now. I don't chase closure. Say it with conviction. Say it for the version of you that used to beg for answers. Say it for the version that used to think someone else's silence meant you weren't enough. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world that you're done waiting for permission to move forward. And stay with me, because in the next part, we're going to break down exactly how your absence creates a shift they can't ignore. Why walking away with calmness makes them question everything they thought they knew. This is where your real power begins. Number 6. They're afraid you'll see the real them. They don't push you away because you see too little. They push you away because you see too much. That's the truth they don't want to say out loud. That deep down, the moment they start feeling safe around you, they also start to panic. Because safety isn't just about protection, it's about exposure. And being seen, fully seen, is one of the most terrifying experiences for someone who's spent their life performing for love, managing their image, and hiding behind emotional armor. So when you show up calm, steady, and emotionally grounded, they start to feel something unfamiliar. Not chaos, not drama, not temporary attention, but truth. And truth is scary for people who've been taught that their true self is unlovable. You may not have said much, you didn't interrogate them, you didn't ask for a full emotional biography, but they felt it. They felt that your energy didn't just hear their words, it listened to their silence. You noticed the pauses, the way their smile flickered when certain topics came up, the shift in their tone when they spoke about past love. And that kind of attention, that kind of quiet awareness, it shakes people. Because most are used to being seen for what they project, not for who they are. And that's what you saw, who they are. Not the curated version, not the filtered one, the raw one, the insecure one, the one that questions if they're enough. And when you didn't flinch, when you stayed, when you held space without judgment, that's when the fear kicked in. Because now they're vulnerable. Now there's something real on the table. And real, my friend, is a threat when your past taught you that being real gets you rejected. So they pull away. Not because they want to lose you, but because they're scared you'll stay long enough to discover the parts they've never shown anyone, the mess, the shame, the emotional chaos they've hidden behind independence, jokes, beauty, intellect, or silence. And when you start seeing behind the curtain, they panic. Because if you really knew them, their patterns, their wounds, their ugly moments, would you still choose them? That's the question that haunts them. That's the question that creates the emotional retreat. They don't push you away because they don't want you. They push you away because deep down, they believe you'll eventually leave once you see the whole truth. It's self-sabotage at its finest. They distance themselves first, before you get the chance to. They reject you before you can reject them. They create the space because they can't handle the closeness. And not because you did anything wrong, but because closeness to them doesn't feel safe. It feels risky. And no matter how grounded you are, you can't remove a fear they haven't faced themselves. Now, here's where most people mess this up. They chase harder. They try to reassure. They say things like, "You can trust me," or "I'm not going anywhere." And while the intention is pure, the impact often backfires. Because words, to someone who's been hurt, are just noise. They don't trust language. They trust behavior. And behavior to them means consistency in silence, strength in distance, calmness under pressure. That's what registers as safety, not declarations. So what do you do when they start to push you away just as things are getting deeper? You don't flinch. You don't beg. You don't take it personally. Because this isn't about your value, it's about their fear. And if you try to fix it, if you chase after them during their retreat, you confirm what they were afraid of all along, that their chaos has the power to unbalance you, that your love is conditional, that their fear makes you anxious. And when that happens, attraction fades, not because you stopped being attractive, but because you stopped being steady. The greatest gift you can give someone in this moment is emotional consistency. You don't need to be louder than their silence. You don't need to be warmer than their coldness. You simply need to remain whole, solid, grounded. You let them retreat without collapsing into insecurity. And if they return to a version of you that didn't change with the wind. That kind of presence rewires something deep in people. It tells them, "You can show me the real you, and I won't run." That's how you help someone feel safe, not by over-explaining or overcompensating, but by showing that you're not scared of their depth, that you're not here to fix them, but you're strong enough to hold space when they can't fix themselves. And if they don't come back, if they stay in hiding, you still win. Because you didn't abandon yourself. You didn't become small just to keep someone who wasn't ready to be seen. You kept your dignity, your peace, your emotional center. And that, my friend, is something most people never learn to do. So if someone pushes you away just as things were getting real, remember, it might not be rejection. It might be fear that you'll see them as they see themselves and not love them through it. But you're not here to prove that you can. You're here to show that if they're ready, you'll meet them in truth. And if they're not, you'll still be whole. Type this in the comments right now. I hold steady. Say it for the you that used to panic when they pulled back. Say it for the version of you that used to over-explain your worth. Say it because you know that your emotional stability is your superpower. And stay with me, because what's coming next will reveal exactly why your silence speaks louder than their doubts ever could. Number 7, they're not sure they deserve you. When someone doesn't feel worthy of love, they'll sabotage it just to confirm the lie they've always believed. And that lie, it goes deeper than anything they'll ever admit out loud. It whispers things like, "You're not good enough." They'll leave once they find out who you really are, or "You don't deserve someone that solid." So what do they do when they meet someone like you, someone emotionally grounded, present, consistent? They retreat. They pull back not because they don't want you, but because they can't believe someone like you could want them. They look at your presence and begin to measure themselves against it. And somewhere in that mental math, they come up short. Not because of anything you've done, but because of the wounds they've carried for years. Wounds left by people who only loved them when they performed, when they hid their flaws, when they played small. So now, when you show up as the real deal, no manipulation, no games, just truth, they freeze. Because what you're offering doesn't align with what they believe about themselves. And here's the wild part. They might even test you to see if you'll leave. They might create unnecessary drama, go cold for no reason, cancel plans, act distant, not to hurt you, but to protect themselves from the pain they think is coming. It's like they're trying to prove to themselves that you're just like the rest, that even the good one will leave, that no matter how different you seem now, eventually you'll see their flaws and vanish. And when you react emotionally, when you try to prove yourself, chase or over-explain, it doesn't reassure them, it confirms their fear. See, they think, I knew I was too much. But this isn't about you fixing them. This is about you not breaking yourself trying to convince them they're lovable. You don't teach someone self-worth by sacrificing your own. That's not love, that's martyrdom. And martyrdom doesn't heal, it drains. The truth is, if someone truly wants to grow, they'll rise to meet you, and if they don't, they'll run from you and call it protection. Let them. That's not rejection, it's redirection. It's life clearing the path for someone who can stand next to you, not underneath you. Because here's the truth most people won't say out loud. It is not your job to be less just so someone else feels more. You're not supposed to dim your light to make them comfortable in their shadows. Your presence should challenge them to heal, not guilt you into shrinking. And when you stop chasing people who don't feel ready for the kind of connection you offer, you stop bleeding for those who wouldn't even hold your hand when you were whole. Let them doubt themselves. Let them pull away. Let them figure it out in their own time. You keep showing up with strength, with truth, and with peace. You don't chase. You don't beg. You stay rooted. Because when someone finally realizes that you weren't asking for perfection, you were just offering connection, they'll understand what they lost. And whether they come back or not, you remain whole. Type this in the comments right now. I don't shrink for love. That's your reminder. That's your boundary. That's your new standard. Press that like button if this hit you deep, and subscribe if you're done chasing people who only know how to love halfway. And remember, folks, your peace is the prize. Not everyone will know what to do with it. Let them go. The ones who are ready won't just stay, they'll rise.